Greetings, Poe fans. Welcome to another edition of Poe Unplugged. I am Carmen Bolden.
And I am Jeanie Smith, and we are
The Potastic Two.
Come zoom with us into the Unbook Club dedicated to the works of Mr. Edgar Allan Poe.
Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome back to Poe Unplugged. And tonight we are going to talk about Poe's short story, The Devil in the Belfry.
Dun, dun, dun.
I was waiting for that. Who would like to start on this conversation about the devil himself?
I thought it was interesting that apparently Edgar Allan Poe himself is the narrator of this story, because he says that very few of my readers have visited this village of Wonder What Time It Is.
That's true. I did not catch that. That's a great catch, Dr. Jeff.
Yeah, and that leads me to think that this is one of Poe's greatest satire work, in my opinion, because he is connecting himself with the story and not just doing an unnamed narrator. And it's just so fun with this story, with all the, like I was telling Carmen earlier, with all the ingrained puns and all these satirical notions, plus, and he, and inadvertently, we're doing this in like a psychological group study, because this would be, if you were taking any kind of psychology courses or anything, this would be the perfect study of a group who are so confined and so determined to stay strict and stringent in what they do every day, because they are determined to keep time. Everything is on time. Everything is very, pointed. And then they are very set on not only clocks, but on cabbage.
Yes.
So it's like, so he's given references not only to the people themselves, but he's talking about it in a very psychological way of how people are so obsessed with time and cabbage.
Yeah.
But it takes just one thing, one person, to just automatically throw everything off, and it just causes mass chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things that I love the most about this story, is that, yes, like Dr. Jeff said, Poe is actually putting himself with the story this time, and he's making it to where it's a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. And I just and the wonder is the wonder what time it is, and it's like you don't really get it until you like wait a minute, what's that? What? That's wonder what time it is. Okay, yeah, I get it now. So it makes you think, going, huh? When you pronounce some of the words, you're pronouncing them in the Dutch the way he meant it to, but he's made it to where when you pronounce it, you have to like go, oh, I get it, So that's one of the things that I loved about the story.
Yeah.
Poe and his genius again.
I started pronouncing them and figured out these need to be pronounced.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It wasn't just one of those you just read. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And the story was written in 1839, and the publication that it was first put in was the Saturday Chronicle and Mirror of the Times. And so that's just, interesting, because a lot of his stories were in magazines, more so than newspapers.
Talking with my son about this story, and I asked him if he ever read it. He said no, he hadn't read that one. And so I encouraged him to read it. And he wanted to know, well, what's so good about it? And I said, well, because he's pretty high up in the enlisted ranks, as high as you can get in the enlisted ranks.
Mm-hmm.
So he I said it's what when I was in the service, it's what we call the RC factor, or resistance to change. And it struck me as a leadership where people are stuck in their ways and they're not going to move, they're not going to change. It takes coming out and panics. And towards the end of it, it just, well, what do we do? What do we do? My God, what do we do? 13 o'clock? My God. And I thought it was very interesting to the resistance to change thing. Besides the fact that I thought he was a pretty good mimic of at least sort of insinuating the presidency of Martin Van Buren, who was a president at the time. And I think there was some satire in there about President Van Buren and, with the Dutch, because he was a Dutch ancestry and all that stuff. And
True.
I mean, I looked him up, and Van Buren, he was I think the only president we've ever had that was English was his second language. His first language was Dutch. And so then they're kind of like, well, why did Poe write this thing with Van der Watijnbetes? Because it's got the Dutch accent to it. I thought there was a lot of little
nuances.
Like somebody mentioned, so somebody mentioned the puns and the twist of the words. There was one thing, and I had to laugh. I had to laugh about it when he's describing the characters, and he talks about the boy.
Oh,
I think you're freezing.
And on the pig, they tied a guilt repeater, a guilt repeater. A female pig ready for eat. So which one is he advertising? I sat there and I had chuckle about it. What's he talking about? Which one? Really clever the way you wrote it. That's all I've got to say here.
Okay. All right.
Well, Poe, we know, is very much, he likes to dig in some political, spikes every once in a while because of King Pest with, with Andrew Jackson and a few other things. We know what he felt for transcendentalists. So,
yeah.
But one of the things that I noticed about this story is twofold. Clocks were much more industrialized in the North. They weren't used in the South because it was mostly agricultural in the South and not industrial. So the South, they went by crops. So that's why I think the cabbage was thrown in also. Because to plant the cabbage and to harvest the cabbage, it has to be very stringent when you do it. Because if you mess up or miss taking care of the cabbage, you can lose a head of cabbage easily by missing one day. So that's one of the crops that has to be very well taken care of and watched constantly. So I think that's another reason that he threw the cabbage in there. Is to harvest it, it takes about 75 to 100 days to harvest cabbage. And then you can start planting, right after the winter and then into the spring. And then, so I think he was like using a connection there, in my opinion, with the North and the South, with how time was being measured. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, you got the clocks that they're so set to where they have to pay attention to, but then they also have the cabbage that they have to make sure is taken care of.
Yeah.
So I liked it because it was a good connection to learn a little bit about both agricultural and industrial time. So
that's a very good point.
Yeah, it really is. a couple of things that I noticed, and just, sometimes I when things pop up and while I'm reading, I actually followed along while I listened to a reading of it. And very interestingly, the reading that I listened to, the narrator, or the reader, changed up some of the words, which I thought was really odd because there was no reason to, but it was just, I guess, just how they were saying it. But he mentions Donner and Blitzen, or Dunder and Blitzen.
Yes, uh-huh.
And so, from the 'Twas the Night Before Christmas was by Clark Moore in 1823. So that was, not too far, 26 years before Poe wrote this. Or no, I'm sorry, no,
About
16 years.
16.
Yeah, 16 years. And then, funny enough, I don't think I ever knew this, but in Dutch, it is actually thunder and lightning is Donner and Blitzen.
And Blitzen,
And
yes.
I did not know that. So I learned something new, and I was like, this is a cool little trivia,
And I don't know why I knew that, but I knew that. I guess I read it somewhere a long time ago.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
thought that was really cool. And then the other little thing I picked up on, so when he describes the devil is carrying a fiddle. And so what came to my mind was, how long has the devil been associated with carrying a fiddle? Because it's not everywhere that you see that, but it's
Charlie Daniels.
Yeah, exactly.
The Devil and Daniel
Exactly.
Webster.
And so I looked it up, and basically what I found was it's that like idea has been around since the 16th century, with in the Renaissance era, where the violin was often used in with dances and things that they would have. And they basically kind of related that to like devilish merriment and things like that. And then it went on to be featured in different art renderings and things like that. And then in the 18th and 19th century, Niccolo Paganini, I'm going to read this, who was rumored to have made pacts with the devil to achieve his skill. And so then Giuseppe Tartini's 1740 Devil's Trill Sonata also kind of has that same element. And so so by the 19th century, the violin became, or the fiddle, the devil's instrument. And so I thought that was really interesting, just the history of that. And it's like, Poe added that in, and just, it's the devil and the fiddle is not everywhere, but it's in more things than we realize.
Well, if you want to go even back farther, we can actually throw it right back into the Roman days when you think about Nero.
True.
Watching, playing his it wasn't called a fiddle, a lyre.
Yeah.
Yes. Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Playing his lyre while he watched Rome burn. So, and because Nero has always been portrayed as like the craziest of all, and the evil and devil incarnate per se.
Yeah.
So if you want to look at it in that aspect, we can go all the way back to the Roman times with the lyre and Nemo to see the devil with the fiddle. So
yeah,
and it is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Why the fiddle? Why the violin? Why that of all sorts? I mean, that wouldn't be like one of the instruments that I would pick. Although, if you raise a child who you want them to play a musical instrument, the drums would be more apt, because you want to beat the crap out of them, because stop beating the drums at middle with a trumpet or something like that. So, although, taking the string can't think of what's the stick called that you go across the.
Oh, you mean the
bow?
The bow?
Thank you. I was like, why can't I think of that name? So yeah, the bow across the strings, they can be really bad if you're not doing it correctly. So, that's probably why they call it the devil in the belfry.
Yeah, the
He was very,
violin can sound very beautiful, but it also can sound screechy and scratchy and
yep.
horrible. Think of the
Absolutely.
shower scene in Psycho,
Oh yeah.
Yes.
and Dance Macabre by Camille Sasson begins with that strange violin passage.
Mhm.
So yeah, even there, it's considered it's associated with the macabre.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then I also think of like the devil with the fiddle too, with the whole Robert Johnson, musician and
Hmm.
making the deal with the devil at the crossroads. And so,
Hmm. Well,
but
I may be mistaken, but isn't the violin like one of the oldest instruments?
that I don't know.
I kind of think I read that somewhere. I don't know
It is
where.
because it is a innovation of the lyre.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I can't
somehow,
remember.
somehow that's hitting me, but I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the lyre. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, other thoughts? Other thoughts?
I don't want to sound too much like a undue critic, but I guess I didn't find it to be as compelling as the rest of you do. It seemed like a pretty simple idea that there is this town of people who are really set in their ways, and that's kind of it. I mean, I didn't see much of a story arc to it.
Okay.
Now, the way that you folks are looking at it, it does seem like there are other layers to it. I hadn't even thought of the. I thought the fiddle was kind of an odd uh, device to bring into the thing, and it sounds like maybe there's more meaning to it than that, and the connection to the president and the rest of that. Maybe there was a lot more depth that a contemporary reader would understand. But I guess I came away from it as feeling like I've just burned through a number of pages and I don't think anything's happened other than, at the very last moment when the devil comes up and beats the guy and then I thought even the ending was a little kind of phoning it in. Like, well, let's all his body go up and get rid of the guy. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just wasn't that impressed compared to a lot of his other work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I have to
I
say
think
that. Go ahead, Mike.
no. I don't mean to interrupt. The only thing I want to say is the ending is the only thing about the story I did not like.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
just seemed like it was chopped off at the end. Now, in modern times, this would have been a wonderful setup for part two.
Yeah.
Because the ending was just kind of like, well, let's go get him, let's go get him. Well, what happens when you got him? So
Yeah.
I agree that the ending is kind of like a bleh, but the rest of the story, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I
That's
do
all
like
I have to
the
say.
the tongue-in-cheek parts of it.
I
Well,
like the
what I
tongue
was
in
Was the
cheek
cat?
parts of it too. And I felt like when I read it the first time, I was like, okay. So then I waited a couple of days and read it again, and I liked it better the second reading.
Mm.
I mean, there's been some things in my life like that I've read something a long time ago, and someone said, well, I'm reading such and such. And I'm like, I didn't really like that. And then maybe being older or something, read it again. It's like I liked it a lot better the second time.
Hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think it'd be one that I could even go back and read again. There's so much detail throughout. And the first couple times that I read it, I kind of thought it seemed like, to me, it was kind of like he was kind of mirroring Charles Dickens a little bit with some of his stories and the way he tells his stories, where for a while you're like, okay, what's going on here? And then you kind of start figuring things out. So I don't know if that's crazy or what,
That's
but
actually, I think it's a good point, Gary, that um, on a first read, you aren't really sure where it's going. And if you, after a read through, you kind of know the general thrust. And then when you're reading it the second time, you pick up on things like everybody has the exact same number of kids who are doing the exact same thing, and they all uncross their legs at the exact same moment. Is like you pick up on, okay, he's really emphasizing this idea of rigid uniformity, whereas first
Yes.
pass through, I think it kind of escapes the reader.
Yeah. That's exactly what I thought. It's exactly what I thought. Is it seems like, and it kind of mirrors some situations of, I feel like, things that are happening today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
There's a lot of rigidity out there.
Well, the one thing for me was that growing up in a small town, this was so reminiscent of
Yes.
exactly what happens in a small town.
Yes.
Is
And I
that
grew up in a
everybody,
small town,
yeah,
and I left that
everything was,
small town.
yeah. Oh, I did too, a long time ago.
Yeah.
But even when I go back, it was
Uh-huh.
like nothing was different.
Yes.
Nothing had changed.
Yes.
And even with the little bit of modicum of progress, it still wasn't enough to make a big difference. And so that's what I was getting the most out of this story, is that when they changed by the strike of the 13th bell, or would you call it the bell? Yeah, I guess the 13th on and it just kind of threw the whole town into mass chaos, because you were taking their rigidity and their everyday lives and changing it to the point they didn't know how to do it. They didn't know how to cope. They didn't know. And I think that's one of the reasons that maybe it ended the way it did. Because even though they said, yes, we need to go and we need to do this, they didn't know how.
Yeah.
They had
It drew
lost their.
it's like what you mentioned before. It throws everything into chaos.
Yeah. And that's why it ended the way it was, is because it's nothing but chaos. So that's pretty much, by changing that one thing, you have totally ruined the whole dynamic of the whole town and put a kink in their system. They no longer knew how to react. And I hate to say it, and because I have a hell of a lot of military family, but knowing in the military you have to have that cadence, that in tuneness with each other, being in a group, being in a beehive, for lack of saying it. Even in the beehive world, the queen rules the roost, but the worker bees do all the work, and they all do it at it has to be done at certain times, has to be rigid, has to be known. But if you take the queen out of it, the worker bees lose their minds, and some of them start dying off because they don't know how to do anything without having the queen there. And that's kind of like with this story, it's like, hey, let's go mess with their minds and throw them out of the sink of everything and then see how it works. It's like throwing a rock in the middle of a calm stream, and then you see all the ripples. Only this is more on the mental scale.
Yeah.
I
feel
think
like it's what
throwing in the idea of the fear of the unknown too.
Yeah.
That Jeanie. Not knowing like what to do because they've never had to encounter anything different.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Or they've never allowed themselves to encounter anything different.
I think that's a good point right there. Never allowed themselves. And when they have to kind of allow themselves, it freaks them out.
Yeah.
They don't know how to react because they've never had this situation before.
No.
And it's like they're in now a state of flux and they don't know what to do.
Two things. One, I just looked up what might have been going on in the world, and Poe would have lived in Philadelphia at this time, of what would cause him to write a story like this. And so some of it might relate to, like, New York at one time was New Amsterdam, which was Dutch settlers. Then Philadelphia apparently was a city that was very obsessed with being punctual. And the newspaper actually had asked Poe to write this story. So it could have been just a whole, like, let's just make fun of it.
They asked Poe to write this story.
Yes, they commissioned him to write it.
Isn't that something?
I mean, they gave him the story arc. I mean, the plot, like
You
write a story
wonder.
about. I'm sorry.
You wonder, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe just threw it a little tidbit that we want something that's very chaotic.
Yeah.
Where everybody freaks out.
And
that's very interesting.
Yeah. And so another thing that just came up when I was looking that up was that a connection to the 13 o'clock. 1984 starts out with the 13 o'clock. Yes. And so did George Orwell ever read this story?
Yes.
Because it also, like, he did that to kind of create that unsettling feeling of the city and all of this kind of stuff. And so that's just food for thought for later on.
Well, if you also think about Philadelphia, what's the big bell in Philadelphia? Liberty Bell.
Yeah.
You know. So Devil in the Belfry, think about the Liberty Bell.
Yeah.
So that could have been another way of Poe, like, doing his political poking.
Yeah, definitely. So now you've got me picturing I've been to the Liberty Bell once, like a devil sitting up underneath it.
Wouldn't shock me. Well, you do know that's not the only one.
Kind of doing the clapper.
Yeah.
There's like three Liberty Bells. There were like 3 Liberty Bells. This was the one that actually made it to the Freedom Hall.
Yeah.
And the reason it got cracked is because it fell off the back of the wagon.
Yes.
It's like, oh, look, talk about the America. It fell off the back of the wagon. We fall off the wagon all the time.
Yeah, I for me, I do like this story. It's not one of my top favorites or anything of that sort, but like I said, I like the tongue in cheek. But I think the thing that for me it's missing is the interaction between the devil and the Belfry man was too quick. It was like, let's draw this out. Let's add some dialogue. And Poe's dialogue was always impeccable. And so it's like, why did he cut the story off like we were talking about earlier? And so,
well, do you think it's possible because he was writing it for somebody that they said so many words?
That's very possible. Absolutely.
And like the deal with him with some of his other stories, the more words he wrote, the more he got paid.
True.
Maybe he didn't get paid. Maybe they just said, we're going to pay one thing here. And that was part of the tongue in cheek. Like, well, if you're not going to pay me more for a longer story, then I'm going to cut it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could see him doing that. Can't you?
Yeah. Oh,
kind of being a smart ass.
Oh, yeah. I almost want to do copy and paste it into Word and see how many words there are.
Exactly.
It's really a good point, though, Carmen. Because I want to know more about the motivation of the devil coming up there. It could be through dialogue or whatever, but it feels so random. And I guess I just infer that the devil likes to create havoc, and he's come to this place, it's very ordered, and wants to disorder it. But the beating about the head with a violin, and then the fact that, and then it's the clocks that throw everything off. It'd be nice if he would have spent a little more time kind of playing with that plot device, rather than just, as you say, just kind of getting it out there in a couple of sentences, and then we don't really. I think he could have squeezed a lot more meaning and a lot more interest with that plot device.
Well, Steve, I think you should write your own story.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, really, seriously.
The aftermath of the devil in the Belfry.
Yeah,
you could call it 13 o'clock.
Yeah,
that's great.
Absolutely. That's a great title.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my God, come on, Steve, you can do it.
Exactly.
If anyone can, Steve.
Exactly. And well, one of the other things that I was thinking of about this story is one of the things about the devil couldn't have been a devil, but like a kid that was left the town and grown up and actually was coming back because he was wanting to cause chaos and because I was thinking of it from my own point of view about how growing up in that stringent of a time and place and then going out in my own and then coming back and how I just want to, mess everything up. Because one of the things is when I became a teacher, I was actually going to go and apply to work at my old high school because, so I could move back, be closer to the family. One of my old teachers from my high school told me, he said, "Don't do it." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Don't do it." He said, "You can't." He said, "They are not ready for you. You would not be able to be here because they are not ready for you." And that's one of the things with this story that keeps resonating with me is that my hometown wasn't ready for me. Even when I was growing up, my own family, I didn't fit in, and I left as soon as I could. And it was like, I kept in touch, but I kept in touch via my mom. But everybody else, no, because I was considered the outcast. I was not the one that was keeping time. I was not the one that was in the right place to be in that time. Is the way I felt it. And so that's one of the things that hit me was like, is this really the devil, or is this just like a representation of someone who got out and is coming back to try to wreak havoc and cause problems in a place that he hated and didn't want to be there and wanted to cause a ruckus, as the old saying goes.
Yeah.
So that's just from my own point of view.
I find that really interesting, Jeanie, because when I graduated from college in the Kansas City area, I went back to my hometown and taught there for 7 years and decided I've had enough. Because I didn't feel like I was fitting in either. So I left. Best thing I ever did.
Yeah. I mean,
it just wasn't working.
No, I just never could conform. And it wasn't that it was anything bad. It's just that I couldn't conform.
Right.
Because my way of thinking and what I wanted out of life just didn't fit into theirs. And there was nothing wrong with that. It just was not to be, in my opinion. So, but when I was reading this, that the devil in the Belfry was like, oh, somebody coming back who was wanting to get back at everybody in the town.
Yeah.
And so I thought, that could be.
I think, Mike, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, he's talking about you going back home. It resonated with you. The story did. Was the 20 years before I retired. We lived in a small town in Texas. And I was a teacher at the school at the time when it happened. And we got a new superintendent who came in. And two things, he didn't last long. One of the reasons he didn't last long, I suspect, is because the man was a Mormon and his family was a Mormon. And he said that didn't work with these people. And then he was hired and they made his wife the choir director for the district. And so when it came time for the Christmas program, it wasn't what the community of 2,000 people expected to see. She put on this Christmas program, all Hades cut loose.
Oh yeah.
We've never done it that way.
Wow.
We want to do it the way we've always done it.
Mhm.
Needless to say, that superintendent lasted 2 years because once the lady came out and she said, well, this is the way we're going to do it. They were
Mhm.
blackballed from that town, and he was in charge of the school district. So this is an example to me of what Poe was saying about people and stuck in your ways and don't want to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely got that from it too, for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah. Holly, we
I
have
think one thing I
and the other
learned,
thing I was going to say is Poe didn't always fit in places.
Right.
true.
yeah,
Definitely not.
No.
Yeah. So
Misunderstood.
maybe that's why he felt it was necessary to write the story. It was his way of
Mhm.
saying people don't fit in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I found an interesting tidbit of information when I was reading this story, and then I read a little bit about Martin Van Buren. And I didn't know, which I thought was kind of an interesting tidbit of nothing information, is that our phrase that we use 10,000 times a day, okay, probably originated from Martin Van Buren, which I thought was very interesting. Started out because he was from Kinderhook, New York, and they called him Old Kinderhook. And then his people supported him, kind of like his backers, and they just referred to him as OK, Old Kinderhook.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got to, and we're stuck with it. And I'll never even crossed my mind. Where did that expression come from that I use millions of times? Where did it come
I've
from?
never heard
thought
that
about
story before. That's interesting.
Mhm. That
Yeah, I
is.
think Old Kinderhook.
Old Kinderhook.
Yeah.
There's an alternative theory that it stands for all correct, with correct spelled with a K. That was an editing term, and the correct with a K was just kind of a jocular kind of thing. But that's a competing theory that OK came from as an editing term, meaning all correct. I don't think anyone knows for sure where it came from.
Yeah, this was interesting.
Oh, absolutely. I guess the only thought I had on I like this idea that Jeanie had of, and that you've all kind of worked with, that it could be somebody coming back that doesn't fit in and is kind of throwing a monkey wrench into things.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm kind of warming to this idea of an alternative version or a sequel, I wonder if it would have been really effective if there were no agent that came in and created the havoc, and instead, if just something messed up in the clockworks and it struck 13,
Mm-hmm.
and all hell broke loose and no one knew what to do. And then you just get away from this idea of there's some agent trying to make it so, which, if you take that person away, then all the focus is on the townspeople on not being able to deal with, something out of order.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point, Steve, because then it's kind of almost like the devil, like they're blaming their problems on someone
Right.
else. Like they're not taking
Mhm.
they're not taking credit for
Exactly.
their own
Exactly.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a way, I don't know why, but this just flashed in my brain. This reminded me of the Grinch Who Stole Christmas, just the Whoville, and they all had their little ways, and then the Grinch came in and upset the whole town, and
Oh, yeah.
he lived in the mountain.
Mhm.
Sorry.
I kind of took the story as a whole, kind of almost like a fable, like a warning,
Yeah.
not like a warning to be more flexible, a warning to think for
That's
yourself,
exactly
and not
what
be
I
part of
thought,
the hive
Holly.
mind.
Mhm.
So I kind of, for me, the punchline was kind of at the end. Well, yeah, that's what you get for depending on everyone else and not thinking for yourself.
Yeah.
Now you can't
Yes.
function.
Mhm.
Yes.
Kind of like The Giver. Like, I kind of remind me of like The Giver, where everybody was in this like
Yes.
weird society where like they couldn't cope with anything. They had to be told what to do and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the ending to the story at all. The end of the story at all is, let's get rid of this guy who's creating this problem and go back to our old ways.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So
and
it's
if you
like,
think about it, from Poe point of view that he, if you want to, I guess, obfuscate and say, hey, is this his way of saying that everything is on time, everything's working, everything's perfect, but then when suddenly people don't like the things that happen and they don't like change, how do they react? And then all of a sudden everything goes to pot, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't deal with it. Go ahead, Holly. What?
Oh yeah, sorry, Jeanie. And Steve, to your point, can things ever go back to the way they were once change has been introduced?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it could.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would hope, as a reader, you would hope that this was the lightning bolt that kind of shakes these people from their complacency.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the narrator, or Poe, or whoever we're calling him, is making an effort. Let's get rid of this guy who's creating this disruption to our way of life.
I think Poe's use of the word ancient too is important in that last paragraph, to restore the ancient order of things. In other words, if he had just said to restore the order of things, that to me has a very different meaning from the ancient.
Right.
It's like
the
he's
word
putting the
ancient
knife
really makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's putting the knife in and twisting it. Like,
Do
you see what I'm talking about? Like, you
Yeah.
really want to go back to the really ancient way of doing, or do you want to come up to the current modern way of doing things, of thinking? So I think that was
the way it says, we're going to stick to our clocks and cabbages.
Exactly.
Stick to our clocks and cabbages.
Cabbage Patch Kids must have came from there now.
Well,
correct time and fine kraut.
Yes.
Yeah, and looking at the last paragraph where it says, affairs being thusly miserably situated, I left the place in disgust and now appeal for aid to all lovers of correct time and fine kraut. That sentence cracks me up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Kind of like, either get with it or
mm-hmm.
I left in disgust because they're not getting with it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you also have to think about what was going on and what had happened in the, America during this time, because they had been going through the Great Compromise, and then they were going through the Great Awakening, and also they were having to deal with the war hawks. And because it was at this time that we actually, as America, were almost in the Civil War before the Civil War actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
And they were having to fight off all of this by learning how to change. Because part of the problems that was occurring was people wanted to go back to the way things had been.
Yeah.
Things were changing, things were happening, and they were fighting against it. And with Poe's use of the word of ancient times, I mean, that could have been a double meaning, especially. So it kind of was a mixed bag. And maybe he wasn't meaning certain things that we were reading into it. But at the same time, he was living in this world. So we don't know how he was actually reacting and what he was thinking about and when he was writing. But as we all know, we have influences that show up in our writing all the time that we don't know until all of a sudden we're going, wait a minute, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
And so it could have been the same thing here.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm just spitballing here. So, we just came out of the Texas, the war for Texas independence was 1836. We're about to go into the Mexican-American War.
Mm-hmm.
Things are happening. Manifest Destiny is coming into play.
Yeah.
So
lots of
Lewis
change.
and Clark. Yeah. So and
I've enjoyed all the historical information many of you have given tonight with this, and it reminded me of many a literature class I took in college. And the classes I liked the most, as I recall, were the ones where the professor made a point of keeping us informed of what was happening at the time that this was being written, just like we're doing here tonight. And you can't separate a person out from that historical context, I don't think, unless the person's living in some bubble somewhere underground, they're being affected by everything going on around them.
Well, and think about Poe's military background and thinks that he would be, that somebody else that didn't have that kind of military background. I mean, he could see things from a different angle because of that.
Yes.
I think that's made a difference in a lot of his writing, in all honesty.
And he didn't fit in well with the military life because he was not a conformist.
He didn't stick with it. He went to college and didn't stick with it. I mean, he kind of was all over the map because he just didn't seem to fit in. And I think he was different than a lot of people in his time. A lot of people didn't like his writing at all. He was sort of a failure in a lot of ways.
It is.
I just want to say that one of the things that I read this week that I didn't have any idea about the presidency was that Van Buren, during the time this thing was written, the Democratic Party was going through a big change. And President Van Buren, even though he was considered by most historians to be average, or an average president, or maybe a little bit less than average, one of his great accomplishments was turning the Democratic Party into a political machine. And so I think that kind of goes into what was going on at the time that this story was written. Just an old, everyday party to behold and to deal with.
Well, yeah, and the political party.
One of the things that I thought about is that Poe was not accepted by a lot of people and was getting a lot of grief from different people in America among authors and other people because of his reviews, some of his negative reviews, and some of the chaotic things that were going on in his life because he wasn't well thought of by a lot of people and wasn't accepted by the establishment, so to speak. So that kind of hit me while I was reading the story too.
Everybody's made some really good points about this story, and it's one that I think gets lost in all the Poe works. And I think we have analyzed this one more than some of the other ones that are really popular. It's very interesting to think about that.
This was my first time to read it. And I mean, I've got a complete copy of all of his works. I didn't even know it existed until it was brought up. And I'm like, well, that's one I haven't read. So anyway.
Well, and just so you know, I did copy it into Word, 3,238 words.
Not too shabby.
No.
It's not long.
You wonder, was he given 3,500 and he was like, nah, or 3,300?
I think it's a distinct possibility.
Yeah.
Where they say we want a story or an article and it can't be any more than this number of words.
Yeah. I mean, it was a newspaper, so there's not a whole lot of room, and depending on how it was all laid out back then.
It's interesting.
Yes. Well,
and you can also think of it as Poe, being an artist himself, when he's commissioned to write something, but they probably gave him parameters he had to write with, and he had to, and this was his way of kind of like sticking it to them by writing what they wanted, but still putting himself into it.
Yeah.
Literally, by putting himself in the story and saying,
And he couldn't avoid putting something supernatural like a devil into the story.
Exactly.
He had to get that in there.
Oh my God.
Had to throw that in there. Had to throw something with the religion in there.
Yeah. And the only other thing that came to mind, because he mentioned cabbage so much, was just when you think about a really bad act that, on stage, a performance of some sort, And
they
that's
threw
the one thing
cabbages.
that people throw is
Cabbages.
And so it's like, is he launching literary, verbal cabbage with this story too?
Could be possible.
Yes, could be.
Well, in keeping with the story, I wonder what time it is because it is the time is close to being the end of our Poe Unplugged for this evening. Sorry, I had to do that. But just a reminder. So next month for December, we have on December, I'm checking my dates, December 30th. Yes, Poe Prophecies, The Raven. And you can find it on Amazon. And I think it's because I've already got the copy. I think it was like, Gary, is it like $10 or less?
Something like that.
And I think it might be Kindle
$9.99.
Unlimited too. Jeannie, have you checked on that for Kindle Unlimited?
I can. Hold on.
All right. And then to go ahead and kind of announce for January, we hadn't talked this far ahead, but Jeannie and I talked about it. And so January 27th, it'll be the last Tuesday of January. We decided to do the system of
Dr. Tar and Professor Feather.
Professor Feather, yes. And that's another really fun satire. And if you haven't read it, and so we'll want you guys' thoughts in February and March. So
and you said January what?
30th. January 27th.
30th.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, 27th.
January 27th, December 30th.
Yeah, December 30th, Poe Prophecies by P. Anastasia, and January 27th for the system of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather. And like I said, give us suggestions for February and March. I think, Steve, was it you or Cheryl that suggested we do the Purloined Letter?
Oh, I think I did that.
I think it was Cheryl.
I just wanted to, I think I wanted to see something of dip into his C. Augusta Penn stories. Yeah, his detective stories.
And actually it's a great time to do it. Actually, I think the past 2 Januaries, we did Murders in the Rue Morgue first, and then we did the Murders of Marie Leger.
Oh, okay.
And then, so it would be perfect to do the Purloined Letter, and we could do that for February. Do y'all want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so that
I guess the February and March meetings will both be on the 24th.
Yes.
February
or
24th.
March 31st, I guess.
Oh yeah, we could do March 31st. Mm-hmm. So just let us know what y'all want to do for March, and we're up for whatever.
And Poe Prophecies you can get as a Kindle edition, but it's not on Kindle Unlimited.
Gotcha.
You'd have to buy it.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Does anybody else have anything else to add?
I hope everybody
just simply because.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Just because, again, today is the day that my book came out, I would point out that my cocktail, there's a book of cocktails. My cocktail for The Devil, the Belfry uses cabbage and thyme. If you get get the drift.
Oh, yes.
Blocks and cabbages.
Oh, that's great.
Your book is hilarious. That is a hilarious book.
That is awesome. Yes. So go check out Steve's book and tell us the name again.
It's Potable Poe, available at fine purveyors. And you have to keep us updated on your travails getting the flavored raven out.
Yes. And due diligence. We're going to hopefully speak to somebody and get this resolved and go from there. And we're hoping by the end of this month. So praying.
Best of luck with
people
that.
are going to want to get that for Christmas presents.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were trying to hope to try to get it out by Black Friday, but
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Who knows?
There's still time. You never know. So
Yep.
Exactly.
yes, we will. We'll send out a special email.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Well, happy Thanksgiving.
yes,
Yes.
happy Thanksgiving to everybody. If
Happy
you're
Thanksgiving,
traveling-
everyone.
Yeah, if you're traveling, stay safe and just have a great time with friends and family.
Mhm.
And I will be traveling to Tulsa, Oklahoma to see my youngest stepdaughter. So
Oh, good.
we're looking forward to that.
Good.
Well, safe travels.
Thank
Yes.
you. So I guess until next time, December 30th, I guess we are.
We are.
Oh,
wow.
Out.
Yay.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
It's been a great
Bye,
discussion.
everyone. Have a safe
Bye,
holiday.
Johnny.
All right. Bye. Yes, I love Cheryl's little Poe. He's so cute.
You guys
Bye, Dad.
stop recording.
Yes, Judy.
Okay.